Why are we wasting breath on this brainless servant? Tariq's Arabic was a jagged sneer, his eyes raking over Nia with the casual cruelty of a man inspecting a piece of property. He didn't even bother to lower his voice, certain she was as uneducated as she was invisible to him. She's a vacant creature, Omar. Nothing but a puppet in a silk dress who belongs in a kitchen, not a gala. Omar nodded, his gaze passing right through Nia as if she were just another piece of the hotel's furniture. The Americans love their little ornaments. Let her stand there and look pretty for the cameras. Then we can ignore the help and find the men who actually own the company. Nia stood perfectly still in her strapless navy satin, her fingers steady against her wine glass, despite the venom being spewed in her face. They stood there grinning, completely oblivious that they were mocking their own executioner in her native tongue. Seconds away from freezing the room with a reply in perfect Arabic and canceling their $900 million deal on the spot. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The gleaming brass handles of the Fairmont Crescent's presidential ballroom felt cool under Nia Albright's palm as she pushed through the entrance. Camera flashes erupted immediately, temporarily blinding her. She blinked, maintaining her practiced smile as her eyes adjusted to the bright lights and glittering chandeliers. Her midnight blue evening gown whispered against the marble floor as she moved forward. The dress had been carefully chosen. Elegant, but not flashy. Powerful, but not aggressive. Perfect for signing a $900 million deal that would transform water infrastructure across 3 regions. "Graham, over here!" a photographer called out. Graham Vale, chairman of the Aegis board, stepped smoothly in front of Nia, spreading his arms wide in welcome. His silver hair caught the light as he beamed for the cameras. "And of course, our CEO," the photographer added, almost as an afterthought. Nia kept her expression neutral, though her jaw tightened slightly. A server offered champagne. Nia declined with a small shake of her head. She needed absolute clarity tonight. The massive ballroom sparkled with wealth. Crystal glasses, designer gowns, diamond cufflinks. The air smelled of expensive perfume and fresh flowers. "Mrs. Vale, welcome," a donor approached, hand extended toward Nia. "Ms. Albright," Graham corrected smoothly. "Nia is our founder and CEO." The donor's smile flickered. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I just assumed—" "No harm done," Nia said quietly, though the assumption stung. She'd built Aegis from nothing into a global leader in water purification systems, yet here she was, still being mistaken for someone's wife. Across the room, she spotted Omar Haddad and Tariq Nasser watching her. They stood apart from the crowd, expensive suits setting them apart from the standard black tie attire. Omar raised his glass slightly in acknowledgement, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. Tariq didn't bother smiling at all. Graham's hand touched her elbow. "Let's keep things light tonight," he murmured. "No need to dive into technical details or numbers. This is about relationships." Nia turned to face him. "The final contract terms will be handled through proper channels," Graham cut in smoothly. "Tonight is ceremonial. Stay gracious. Stay gracious." The words echoed in her head as she watched Graham walk away, immediately drawn into conversation with a cluster of investors, the same investors who had barely glanced at her. She thought of her father, who had taught her Arabic along with the importance of dignity. He'd grown up watching his own parents fight for basic respect. Now, here she was, decades later, still fighting that same battle in a designer dress. A young employee approached, clipboard in hand. "Ms. Albright, where would you like the signing ceremony photographs taken?" Before Nia could answer, Graham called out from across the room, "We'll set up by the main stage. I've already discussed it with the event team." The employee hurried away. Nia watched as Graham huddled with Omar and Tariq near the bar, their heads bent together in discussion. No one had thought to include her in planning the signing ceremony for her own company's landmark deal. She remembered the day she'd founded Aegis, working from a tiny office in her old neighborhood. She'd seen too many families sick from contaminated water, too many communities destroyed by failed infrastructure. She'd built this company to protect people, not to serve as window dressing for wealthy men's schemes. Movement caught her eye. Omar and Tariq were drifting toward the champagne terrace, crystal glasses in hand. Their expressions, as they glanced her way, held something that made her skin prickle. Not hatred, or even dislike, but something almost worse. Amusement, as if she were a child playing at business. She watched Graham join them briefly, then leave with a satisfied nod. Whatever they'd discussed, they hadn't wanted her to hear it. The champagne terrace doors stood open to the warm evening air. Omar and Tariq stood framed in the doorway, backlit by garden lights. Their conversation dropped to low murmurs as others passed, but Naya could see Tariq's smirk, could read the dismissal in Omar's posture. She thought of every board meeting where her expertise had been questioned, every conference where she'd been mistaken for support staff, every donor who'd asked to speak to her boss, assuming the black woman couldn't possibly be in charge. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "Your dignity is not negotiable." Nia straightened her spine, lifted her chin, and moved purposefully toward the terrace. As she approached, she heard their voices shift to Arabic, followed by soft laughter that made her blood run cold. She kept walking, each step precise and measured. The men's backs were to her as their conversation continued, their amusement clear even in the foreign tongue. They clearly felt safe in their private joke, certain she couldn't understand. She was close enough now to hear every word. The warm evening air carried Omar and Tariq's voices across the terrace. Their Arabic flowed smooth and practiced, wrapped in the confidence of men certain they couldn't be understood. "She does photograph beautifully," Omar said in Arabic, swirling his champagne. "The press loves a good story." Tariq's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "Indeed, a perfect face for the annual report. Though someone should tell her to smile more, she looks too serious for decoration." Nia stood perfectly still, her hands relaxed at her sides. Other guests milled nearby, catching only the tone of casual conversation and occasional chuckles. A server passed with fresh drinks. The fountain burbled in the garden below. "The board chairman assures me she'll fulfill her ceremonial duties gracefully," Omar continued, his voice dropping lower. "After that, the serious men can begin their work. Did you see how she tried to discuss technical specifications earlier?" Tariq shook his head. "As if she understands the real mechanics of these deals. But Vale has everything arranged. Once the symbolic face has finished smiling for the cameras, management will become much simpler." Omar nodded, setting his glass on the stone balustrade. "The company needs experienced guidance, not feel-good stories. Though I must admit, they chose their figurehead well. Very photogenic." "Almost rehearsed," Tariq agreed. "Like one of those mechanical dolls that walks and talks on command." He mimicked a stiff marching motion with his fingers. Their laughter mingled with the fountain's splash. A few feet away, a diplomat's wife glanced over curiously, then away again. Nia waited until their amusement faded. Then she spoke, her Arabic flowing as naturally as theirs. "Gentlemen, if you wish to discuss my intelligence and authority, you should at least do so accurately." Her pronunciation was perfect, each word precise and clear. "I built this company from nothing into a global leader in water infrastructure. I understand not only the technical specifications, but also the human cost when deals like this are corrupted by arrogance." The men's faces froze. Omar's glass slipped slightly in his grip. Tariq's smile vanished, as if wiped away. "Your Arabic is—" Omar started. "Fluent," Nia finished for him. "My father taught me. He believed knowledge was power and dignity was armor." She stepped closer, her voice still calm but carrying across the terrace. "He also taught me to recognize when I'm being underestimated." Other conversations around them had stopped. The fountain seemed suddenly louder in the silence. "Ms. Albright," Omar recovered quickly, switching to English with a diplomatic smile. "Clearly, there has been a misunderstanding." No misunderstanding at all, Nia replied, also in English. Her voice carried clearly to the growing audience. You were perfectly clear in both languages. But since we're speaking English now, let me be equally clear. Aegis Global Water Systems is withdrawing from the agreement, effective immediately. A sharp intake of breath from several listeners, a whispered translation nearby. Tariq's face darkened with anger. You cannot, he began. I can, and I have, Nia cut him off. This deal requires my signature. You won't have it. $900 million, Omar said smoothly, still trying to salvage the moment. Surely we can discuss this, like reasonable, like serious men? Nia asked. The words hung in the air between them. No, we cannot. You made your opinion of my leadership quite clear. I'm simply agreeing that we shouldn't proceed. More guests had drifted onto the terrace. Someone near the door was whispering a translation to their companion. A woman in diplomatic dress was nodding with quiet approval. This is emotional and unprofessional, Tariq snapped, his charm evaporating entirely. On the contrary, Nia replied. This is leadership. You assumed I was a decoration because that was easier than respecting me as an equal. That kind of arrogance makes me question every aspect of this deal. She lifted her chin slightly. I won't put my company's reputation behind partners who mistake rehearsed compliance for competence. A burst of applause started from one corner of the terrace. It spread quickly, scattered at first, then building. Several women were smiling openly. A senior diplomat caught Nia's eye and nodded with quiet respect. Omar's face had gone rigid with controlled fury. Tariq wasn't even trying to hide his anger. But they could do nothing as the applause continued, the moment slipping completely beyond their control. Nia felt a hand grip her arm too tightly. Graham Vale had appeared at her side, his public smile completely gone. You have no idea what you've just done, he said through clenched teeth, fingers digging into her skin. But Nia knew exactly what she'd done. She'd chosen dignity over deals, truth over pretense, and her own authority over their assumptions. The cost would come later. For now, she stood straight-backed in the warm evening air, letting the applause wash over her while Omar and Tariq's humiliation hung visible in the space between them. The applause faded into scattered conversations as Nia stood her ground on the terrace. A senior diplomat's wife approached, touching her arm gently. That was magnificent, she said in a low voice. My husband has dealt with those two for years. No one ever calls out their behavior. Other guests drifted closer, offering quiet support. A female executive from Singapore squeezed her hand. We need more leaders like you, she whispered. An African ambassador nodded respectfully as he passed. Omar and Tariq had retreated to a shadowed corner near the fountain, their heads bent together in rapid discussion. Their faces were carefully controlled, but tension radiated from their rigid postures. Several of their usual circle of influence had suddenly found reasons to be elsewhere. Ms. Albright, a woman in her 30s, touched Nia's shoulder. I'm starting my own company next year. Watching you stand up to them, she shook her head, eyes bright. Thank you. For a moment, the victory felt pure and complete. Nia had exposed their contempt, defended her dignity, and inspired others. The warm evening air carried the scent of jasmine. Camera flashes caught the crystal glasses and elegant gowns. It seemed almost worth whatever came next. Then Graham's fingers dug into her elbow again. Upstairs. Now. His voice was barely a whisper, but it carried decades of corporate authority. Suite 742. This can't wait. Nia extracted herself gracefully from the well-wishers and followed Graham to the elevator. His back was rigid as they rode up in silence. The plush carpet muffled their footsteps down the hallway. Inside the suite, Graham's polished manner vanished. He rounded on her, face flushed. Do you have any concept of what you've done? He ran a hand through his silver hair. Any idea of the financial consequences? I prevented my company from entering a deal with partners who showed clear contempt for its leadership, Nia said evenly. $900 million. Graham's voice rose. Do you know what the cancellation clause looks like? The stock implications? The lender covenants that could trigger review? Nia's calm cracked slightly. Cancellation clause? The final terms weren't even signed yet. The preliminary framework committed us to specific timing milestones. Missing them triggers penalties. Graham paced the suite's sitting room. The board was counting on closing this tonight. The press releases were already drafted. Without my final approval? Nia's voice went dangerously quiet. You were so certain I would sign that you pre-committed my company? Your company? Graham laughed harshly. The board has responsibilities beyond your personal feelings about being disrespected at a party. This isn't about feelings. Nia's words could have cut glass. This is about authority and trust. Those men clearly believed they had already secured this deal through channels that bypassed me. Why were they so confident? A knock interrupted them. Layla Grant entered, her face grave. She'd been Nia's friend since college and chief legal officer for over a decade. I've been reviewing what we have of the final package, Layla said without preamble. But significant sections are missing. Technical appendices, regional subcontracts, pricing escalators. She looked at Graham. My team never received the complete documentation. The additional materials were still being finalized, Graham said smoothly. Standard practice for complex international deals. No, Layla's voice was flat. Not standard at all. Not for our company. She turned to Nia. They withheld critical details from legal review while pushing for your signature tonight. This wasn't just about the insult at the gala. That happened because they thought they had already outmaneuvered you. Nia felt cold anger settling in her chest. How many board members knew about the hidden terms? Graham's hesitation was answer enough. The majority anticipated your cooperation with the public aspects tonight, he said carefully. The technical details could have been worked out after the announcement. After I was publicly committed, Nia corrected. After backing out would have seemed emotional and unprofessional. The pieces clicked into horrible clarity. That's why they felt free to mock me in Arabic. They believed they had already won. The deal structure was sound, Graham insisted. The board was satisfied with the underlying. The board deliberately concealed information from my legal team while planning to pressure me into a public commitment. Nia's voice could have frozen flame. You weren't just disrespecting me. You were actively undermining my authority as CEO. We were protecting the company's interests, Graham snapped. Your job was to smile and sign. Instead, you've potentially triggered a financial crisis because two men bruised your ego. Layla stepped forward, eyes blazing, but Nia held up a hand. My job, she said with deadly calm, is to lead this company with integrity, not to be a puppet for men who think they can control me through ignorance and manipulation. She turned and walked out of the suite, leaving Graham sputtering behind her. The elevator ride back down gave her time to compose herself, to settle her features into practiced serenity. She stepped back into the ballroom just in time to see Tariq speaking intently to Jessica Chen, a prominent financial reporter known for breaking stories about corporate drama. Chen's fingers flew across her phone screen, taking rapid notes. The war, Nia realized, was just beginning. The applause had died completely now. Nia watched as invisible lines were redrawn across the ballroom, alliances shifting like schools of fish sensing a predator. Wealthy donors who had smiled at her victory minutes ago now angled their bodies away, seeking safer harbors. A board member she'd known for years suddenly became fascinated with his phone. Omar and Tarek had positioned themselves near the bar, their faces professionally pleasant as they spoke with a cluster of international investors, but their eyes kept tracking her, calculating. The room had become a chessboard, and pieces were already moving. A gentle touch at her elbow made her turn. Layla stood there, her expression carefully neutral. We need to talk, Layla said quietly, somewhere private. They slipped through a discreet service door into a back corridor. The sudden absence of music and chatter was jarring. Steel prep tables and stacked chairs lined the walls. Their heels clicked against the industrial flooring. I've been reviewing what documentation we actually received, Layla said, pulling out her tablet. The irregularities are concerning. There's a maze of subcontracting arrangements buried in the appendices. Shell companies inside shell companies. Show me, Nia said. Layla swiped through several dense pages of financial structures. See these price escalator clauses? They're triggered by market conditions that aren't clearly defined. The rates could triple with minimal oversight. She pointed to another section. And these side letters, they're routed through 3 different offshore entities. I've never seen anything this convoluted in a straightforward infrastructure deal. If I had signed tonight, Nia began, we would have been legally committed to a framework that could be weaponized against vulnerable communities, Layla finished. The ethics compliance nightmare alone would have been devastating. Nia's phone buzzed. A text from Daniel Reed, the corporate compliance consultant they'd brought in last month to audit some concerning procurement patterns. Need to speak with you before I leave. Urgent. Lower lobby lounge in 10? Go, Layla said. I'll keep digging through these documents. We need to understand exactly what we avoided tonight. The lower lobby lounge was dimmer, quieter. Old money-leather chairs and dark wood panels absorbed sound. Daniel Reed sat in a corner, his laptop open. He stood when he saw Nia approach. Thank you for coming down, he said. His usual skeptical expression was replaced by something grimmer. I've been tracking some disturbing patterns in how this deal was structured. He turned his screen to show her a complex web of shell companies, holding firms and financial vehicles. See these ownership chains? They all lead back to private equity groups specializing in resource privatization. They target essential services, water, power, transportation, then jack up rates once they control the infrastructure. In vulnerable regions, Nia said, the pieces clicking together. Daniel nodded. Places with limited oversight or ability to fight back. The technical specifications in this deal would have given them control over water access for millions of people. He looked at her directly. Once the system was in place, they could charge whatever they wanted. Families would have to pay or go without clean water. Nia felt sick. That's why they needed me to sign tonight. Before anyone could trace all the connections. Exactly. The public announcement would have locked it in before the predatory elements became clear. Daniel closed his laptop. Someone went to a lot of trouble to obscure the real purpose of this deal. The question is, who knew the full truth? The board chairman knew enough to hide key documents from my legal team, Nia said. And Omar and Tarek were completely confident I would sign tonight. They thought they had me cornered. Through multiple vectors, Daniel agreed. The public pressure, the pre-committed announcements, the missing documentation. It was all coordinated. They created a machine designed to force your compliance. Nia straightened her spine. Instead, I humiliated them publicly and blew up their entire scheme. Which means the machine will now redirect itself toward destroying you, Daniel warned. They can't let you expose what was really happening here. Her phone buzzed again. A news alert. She opened it and felt her jaw tighten. Breaking, Aegis CEO's volatile outburst. Threatens major deal sources say Nia Albright became unexpectedly combative at International Investment Gala. She showed the headline to Daniel. The narrative was already being rewritten. Her justified stand transformed into emotional instability. The machine was indeed shifting gears. They're moving fast, Daniel said quietly. They'll try to discredit you before you can reveal the truth about the deal structure. Nia's fingers clenched around her phone as another alert lit up the screen. The story was spreading, mutating. Her exposure of their contempt was being erased, replaced by whispers of instability and unprofessionalism. The victory of minutes ago felt hollow now. The night air hit Nia's face as she pushed through the hotel's revolving door. The Washington Monument stood like a distant sentinel against the black sky, its usual majesty feeling more like a cold reproach. Her phone buzzed again, the 7th time in 3 minutes. Don't answer any of them, Layla warned, striding beside her in clicking heels. Not until we understand exactly what we're dealing with. Daniel Reed followed. his laptop bag clutched tight. Their footsteps echoed across the empty valet station where Nia's driver waited with the car door open. The street was eerily quiet for such an expensive part of town, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Her phone lit up again. Graham Vale's name flashed on the screen with a text. Maintain absolute silence. Board must stabilize narrative first. Do not speak to anyone. He's trying to control you through process, Layla said, reading over her shoulder. Standard tactic. Claim everything has to go through proper channels while they shape the story. They slid into the back of the town car, Daniel taking the forward-facing seat. The leather interior felt like a sanctuary after the exposed feeling of the ballroom. As soon as the door closed, Nia's phone exploded with more notifications. Reuters, Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, she read off. 3 board members, 2 major shareholders, and, fantastic, the lending consortium's risk compliance team. They're moving faster than I expected, Daniel said, opening his laptop. The screen's glow illuminated his frown. They must have had response protocols ready. Because they knew this might happen, Layla finished. They prepared for resistance. Nia scrolled through the mounting messages. We need a plan. Not panic, not reaction. A real strategy. Agreed. Layla pulled out her tablet. I can start tracking those missing attachments and side letters. Someone had to route them somewhere. Nothing truly disappears in corporate document systems. I'll map the subcontracting structure, Daniel added, fingers already moving across his keyboard. Follow the money. Identify who profits if this deal goes through without scrutiny. There's always a paper trail. The car glided through empty streets. Nia watched the Capitol's monuments slip past like ghost ships. The Washington elite loved their symbols of power, their marble reminders of authority. But real power moved through darker channels, through hidden contract clauses and buried ownership chains. Take me home, she told the driver. I need to think. The lights were still on when they pulled up to her house. Imani's car sat in the driveway, which was unusual for this hour. Nia's daughter typically worked late shifts at the community health clinic. They found Imani in the kitchen, her medical scrubs replaced by worn sweats, her laptop open on the counter. News headlines scrolled across the screen. Mom, Imani said, standing. I saw the first clips. They're already twisting it. Nia set her clutch down heavily. How bad? They cut everything before you canceled the deal. No context, no Arabic exchange, nothing about what they said to provoke you. Just you looking angry and powerful men looking shocked. Imani's voice was tight with controlled fury. The comments are already getting ugly. Professional criticism is morphing into personal attacks. Standard playbook, Layla said grimly. Deny the insult occurred. Paint the response as irrational. Make it about emotion instead of ethics. Nia moved past them all, walking through the familiar halls until she reached her father's old study. The room remained exactly as he'd left it. Walls lined with language books and civil rights essays, his ancient desk still holding scattered translation notes. She sank into his chair, breathing in the lingering scent of leather and paper. He taught me Arabic in this room, she said quietly, when the others joined her. Said I needed to understand how people speak when they think they're safe from being understood. That's when you learn who they really are. Imani perched on the desk edge. What are you going to do? Fight, Nia said simply. Not retreat, not apologize, not let them bury what really happened. Fight until the truth is so clear they can't hide it anymore. It'll get worse before it gets better, Daniel warned from the doorway. They'll try to isolate you, pressure you, force you to back down. Then we work faster than them. Layla had already claimed the room's reading chair, her tablet casting blue light across her determined expression. I can start requesting document histories now. Most systems maintain automated logs even when files are deleted. I'll help Daniel trace the shell companies, Imani offered. I've seen how corporate structures are used to hide healthcare pricing schemes. The patterns are similar. Nia's phone buzzed one final time. The message was from Graham's assistant. Formal, cold, precise. Notice of emergency board session date. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. location. Aegis Global Headquarters. Attendance. Mandatory subject. Review of material contract breach. The first rays of dawn were just starting to lighten the eastern sky. Nia looked at her father's books, at her daughter's fierce expression, at her oldest friend's steady presence, at the unexpected ally taking notes in her doorway. The trap had been set long before tonight, but traps could be dismantled if you understood their mechanism. "Let's get to work," she said. "We have until sunrise to find what they don't want us to see." The glass doors of Aegis headquarters parted silently as Nia strode through them at 8:45 a.m. Her heels clicked against the polished marble floor, each step precise and measured despite her exhaustion. She'd had exactly 2 hours of sleep, fueled now by determination and black coffee. The vast lobby, usually a source of pride with its cascading water feature and living wall of tropical plants, felt like a stage set for her humiliation. Every flat screen mounted on the walls played the same footage. Nia at the gala, her face stern as she canceled the deal. No context, no Arabic exchange, just her looking, as Imani had predicted, like an angry black woman lashing out at powerful men. Employees scattered near the security desk pretended to study their phones, but she felt their sideways glances. A junior analyst actually stumbled backward to avoid her path. The security guard, Marcus, gave her a subtle nod of support as she passed through the turnstile. "Morning, Ms. Albright," he said quietly. "Don't let them shake you." The executive elevator opened directly into the top floor's mahogany-lined corridor. Through glass walls, she could already see Graham Vale holding court in the main conference room. 8 board members sat around the massive table, with 2 more joining via video screen. Their heads turned as one when she entered. "Ah, Nia," Graham said, his voice oily with false concern. "Thank you for joining us. We were just reviewing the preliminary market impact assessments." She took her seat at the table's head, Layla sliding in beside her with an armful of documents. The room smelled of expensive cologne and anxiety. "Before we begin," Graham continued, "I want to emphasize that this emergency session is about protecting shareholder value, nothing personal. The events of last night have already triggered significant—" "Cut to it, Graham," Nia interrupted. "How bad is the manufactured crisis?" His smile tightened. "Pre-market trading has our stock down 12%. 3 institutional investors have requested urgent clarity about leadership stability. The lending consortium's risk team is reviewing our credit facilities. All because I refused to sign a deal that wasn't properly vetted?" Nia kept her voice level. "A deal whose final documents were deliberately withheld from legal review?" "That's a serious accusation," said Malcolm Peters, one of the board's oldest members. He wouldn't meet her eyes. "It's a fact," Layla cut in, spreading papers across the table. "My team never received critical attachments about pricing structures, operational control, or subcontractor arrangements. Standard review protocols were bypassed. Incomplete paperwork happens in complex international deals," Graham dismissed. But the larger point remains. Nia's public behavior was deeply inappropriate. She embarrassed respected partners and damaged our reputation in key markets. "Respected partners?" Nia's laugh held no humor. "They mocked me in Arabic, assuming I wouldn't understand. They treated me like a diversity puppet instead of the founder and CEO of this company." "Perhaps there was a misunderstanding," another board member began. "There was no misunderstanding," Nia cut him off. "They were explicit, and based on what we're finding in the deal structure, their contempt wasn't just personal. It was part of a larger pattern." Several board members shifted uncomfortably. Harrison Wells, who had always supported her previously, suddenly became very interested in his water glass. The cowardice was becoming clearer by the minute. "The deal structure is not the issue," Graham pressed. "Your emotional reaction is. You can't unilaterally cancel a $900 million agreement because you felt insulted at a party." "I canceled it because it was wrong," Nia fired back. "Because this company exists to protect communities, not exploit them. Because something about this deal has smelled rotten from the start, and now I know why. Baseless conspiracy theories won't help, Graham started. We have preliminary evidence, Layla interrupted, of irregular procurement patterns and shell company links that raise serious compliance concerns. The video screen suddenly flickered with connection issue. Convenient timing. For the next hour, the battle lines became stark. Graham and his allies pushed the narrative of reckless behavior and damaged relationships. Nia and Layla defended the legal and ethical principles at stake. Most board members stayed carefully neutral, waiting to see which way the wind would blow. When they finally emerged, the office atmosphere was thick with tension. Employees huddled in small groups, conversations dying as Nia passed. A few gave her subtle thumbs up or encouraging nods. But among senior leadership, she noticed sharp glances and whispered concerns about market reaction. Her phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. Found something. Shell companies linking Omar Tariq's contractors to 3 different procurement brokers, all with political connections. This goes deep. Call when safe. Nia's jaw tightened. Of course it went deep. Men like Omar and Tariq didn't risk $900 million deals without powerful protection. She reached her office door and paused. Through the glass, she could see a document lying centered on her desk. A single sheet of paper she definitely hadn't left there. Walking in, she picked it up and felt her blood pressure spike. It was a draft media statement, already formatted with Aegis letterhead. The opening paragraph made her hands shake. Aegis Global Water Systems CEO Nia Albright expresses deep regret for her actions at last night's investment gala. Sources close to the situation suggest Ms. Albright has been under unusual stress. She hadn't written it, hadn't approved it, hadn't even seen it until now. They were already trying to write her surrender for her. Nia's hand crushed the unauthorized press statement into a tight ball. Through her office windows, she spotted an unfamiliar woman in a sharp navy suit, speaking with Graham near the elevators. Evelyn Pike, the crisis manager. Another decision made without her input. Carol, Nia called to her assistant. Please ask Ms. Pike to join me immediately. 3 minutes later, Evelyn Pike glided into the office with practiced grace. Everything about her radiated carefully engineered warmth, from her perfectly styled silver hair to her sympathetic smile. Ms. Albright, I'm so glad we're meeting. I know this is a challenging time. Evelyn's voice carried the smooth authority of someone used to managing powerful people's messes. Nia held up the crumpled statement. Did you write this? I drafted some options for messaging. We need to get ahead of the narrative before... Before what? Before people learn that board members concealed deal documents? Before they discover why Omar and Tariq were so confident I'd be forced to sign? Evelyn's smile didn't waver. With respect, Ms. Albright, public perception rarely aligns with complex realities. Right now, the story forming is about emotional decision-making and unstable leadership. The truth is about corruption and concealed documents. Truth is less relevant than optics. Evelyn perched on the edge of a chair, her posture calculated to convey reasonable concern. The media loves a narrative about powerful women losing control. Voters get uncomfortable. Investors get nervous. Board members start wondering about steadier hands. So I should apologize for refusing to be insulted and manipulated? You should acknowledge that tone and timing could have been handled differently. Frame the cancellation as a procedural pause, not a personal statement. Let the board quietly restart negotiations while you focus on stability messaging. Nia's phone buzzed with a text from Layla. Found proof. Key annexes went to Graham, Malcolm, and Harrison 2 weeks ago. Never forwarded to legal. Call me. Ms. Pike, Nia said carefully, I built this company to protect vulnerable communities from exactly the kind of predatory deals certain board members tried to force through last night. I won't apologize for stopping it. Nobody's asking you to compromise your principles. Just help us manage the immediate crisis of confidence. A few careful statements. Some reconciliation photos? No. Ms. Albright, the answer is no. I won't validate lies to protect men who tried to corrupt my company's mission. Evelyn's sympathetic mask slipped for just a moment, revealing steel underneath. The press has already started using words like erratic and combative. Your daughter's medical career could face uncomfortable scrutiny. Old stories about your early struggles could resurface with new framing. The narrative can get very painful, very fast. Are you threatening me, Ms. Pike? I'm explaining reality. Public sympathy is fickle, especially for women of color in positions of power. One wrong move, one angry soundbite. Nia's phone buzzed again. Daniel this time. That subcontractor linked to Omar found their history. Aggressive privatization in 3 regions. Rate hikes forced thousands of families off municipal water. Had to buy from private trucks at 4x cost. Same playbook they planned here. Call ASAP. The pieces locked into place. The hidden documents, the rushed approval, the certainty that she would be forced to comply. They hadn't just tried to humiliate her. They had tried to turn her life's work into a weapon against the very people she had sworn to protect. Ms. Pike, Nia said quietly, I understand you were hired to manage a crisis, but you're managing the wrong one. The real crisis is what certain people tried to do to this company, and to the communities who trust us. The communities will adapt to market realities. They always do. But your reputation? Get out of my office. Evelyn blinked. Excuse me? Get out. And take your messaging strategy with you. I won't help you spin lies to protect corrupt men. After Evelyn left, Nia drove home in silence, her mind racing. The apartment was dark except for the soft light in Imani's study. Her daughter looked up from a stack of patient files as Nia passed. Mom? You okay? Nia paused in the doorway. Just tired, honey. I saw the news coverage. It's getting ugly out there. It'll get uglier before it's done. Imani set down her papers. You know what scares me? If they force you out. If they take control of Aegis. All those families who depend on affordable water access. All those communities who trust the company because they trust you. What happens to them? The question hit Nia like a physical blow. She thought of the neighborhoods she grew up in, where contaminated water had sickened children, the regions where Aegis projects had helped stabilize prices and protect public access, the people who would suffer if Omar and Tariq's privatization scheme succeeded. They won't take Aegis, Nia said softly. I won't let them. In her home office, surrounded by her father's old books, Nia opened her laptop and began typing private notes. She detailed everything: the gala confrontation, the hidden documents, the shell companies, the privatization history. The truth, in her own words, before the board could define her story for her. Her phone lit up with another text from Graham. Be reasonable. Take the statement. Save your legacy. Nia kept typing. The news studio lights cast a soft glow in the empty space. At 5:45 a.m., the building felt like a tomb, perfect for what needed to be done. Nia sat across from Catherine Martinez, a veteran journalist known for exposing corporate misconduct. No cameras rolled yet. They were alone, except for a single audio technician adjusting their microphones. Are you sure about this? Catherine asked quietly. Once we start, there's no taking it back. Nia touched the folder in her lap, containing notes Layla had meticulously reviewed. I'm sure. The board will retaliate. They're already retaliating. At least now it will be in the open. The red recording light blinked on. Catherine's professional demeanor slid into place. Thank you for joining us this morning, Ms. Albright. Let's address the events that have dominated business headlines since Tuesday night. You publicly canceled a $900 million infrastructure deal during what was supposed to be a celebration. Why? Because I discovered the deal had been structured to harm the very communities Aegis was built to protect. Nia's voice remained steady, controlled. Critical documents were withheld from proper legal review. Hidden clauses would have allowed predatory pricing in vulnerable regions. The mockery in Arabic simply exposed what certain parties already believed. that I could be sidelined while they implemented these measures. You understood their remarks? Yes, but their words matter far less than their actions. They assumed I would sign documents I hadn't fully seen, approve structures designed to exploit communities that trust us, and surrender control of Aegis's mission to serve their private interests. Catherine leaned forward. Some sources suggest you reacted emotionally to perceived disrespect. Those sources hope to distract from the real issue. This isn't about wounded pride. It's about hidden documents, concealed conflicts of interest, and contract structures designed to price working families out of water access. Nia opened her folder. Would you like to discuss the specific clauses they tried to slip past legal review? For the next 30 minutes, Nia methodically outlined what Daniel had uncovered: the shell companies, the privatization history, the pattern of price manipulation. She never raised her voice, never showed anger, simply laid out facts with devastating precision. These communities depend on Aegis because we've earned their trust, she concluded. I won't betray that trust to satisfy powerful men who see them as profit centers rather than human beings. The interview aired at 8 a.m. By 9, Aegis employees were gathering in break rooms to watch replays. Admin assistants quietly shared supportive messages. Engineers stopped by each other's desks to discuss what they'd heard. At 10:15, the first community advocacy group issued a statement praising Nia's courage in defending vulnerable populations from predatory infrastructure schemes. By 11, 3 more had joined them. Nia's phone buzzed constantly with messages. Thank you for standing up for us. Community Health Coalition. Finally, someone tells the truth about privatization tactics. Water rights. Watch. You protected our neighborhood once before. We stand with you now. East Side Citizens Alliance. Around noon, Daniel burst into her office, tablet in hand. Public health professors are citing your interview. They're connecting it to previous cases where similar deals led to water access crises. Layla arrived moments later. The employee message boards are on fire. Engineering teams are openly questioning why the technical review process was rushed. Middle management is demanding answers about the hidden documents. For the first time in days, Graham Vale looked shaken when he passed her office. His usual smooth confidence had cracked. He kept checking his phone, responding to messages with sharp, angry gestures. At 3 p.m., a secured email arrived from an anonymous account. Saw your interview. I worked on subcontractor documentation for the deal. What I saw wasn't right. Sending proof. By 6 p.m., Nia's office had become a command center. Daniel spread documents across her conference table, while Layla cross-referenced contract details on her laptop. The anonymous source's files were still arriving in encrypted batches. Look at this, Daniel pointed to a spreadsheet. Projected rate increases of 312% in low-income districts within 18 months. They buried it in technical appendices. And this. Layla turned her screen. Internal memos discussing how to structure the deal so local authorities couldn't block the hikes once implemented. Nia studied the mounting evidence, her father's voice echoing in her memory. Truth is armor, baby girl. Wear it like steel. A soft knock interrupted them. Carol, Nia's assistant, poked her head in. Sorry to disturb you, but you should see this. The lobby's getting crowded. Through the security feeds, they watched as community leaders and local residents began gathering in the Aegis headquarters entrance. Many held signs. Stand with Nia. Protect our water rights. Communities over corruption. Layla squeezed Nia's shoulder. Still think you're fighting alone? Another batch of files arrived from their anonymous source. Daniel opened them eagerly, while Nia watched her phone light up with more messages of support. The truth was finally breaking through. Papers rustled across Nia's desk as fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Empty takeout containers from Wong's kitchen crowded one corner. Evidence of hours spent combing through documents. Coffee cups dotted the landscape of scattered files and sticky notes. Outside her office windows, Washington's evening traffic crawled through darkened streets. Look at this structure, Daniel said, tapping his laptop screen. The procurement chain runs through 6 different shell companies before reaching the actual contractors. He rubbed his tired eyes. Omar's fingerprints are all over it, but legally distant enough to claim separation. Layla raised her head from a stack of financial documents. That fits with what I'm seeing in the fee arrangements. The price triggers are buried in technical appendices, but they're devastating. Once a municipality signs, they're trapped. She picked up a yellow legal pad covered in her neat handwriting. After 18 months, they could triple water costs with almost no notice. Miss 2 payments, and the entire system defaults to private control. "Show me," Nia said, moving to look over Layla's shoulder. The numbers made her stomach clench. These rates would bankrupt half the communities we serve. "That's the point," Daniel replied. "Create dependency, force default, seize assets. It's a standard playbook for infrastructure vultures. I've seen it before in my journalism days." Nia walked to her window, staring at the city lights. The anonymous source had been sending documents steadily for hours. Internal memos, draft agreements, email chains, technical specifications. Each new file revealed another layer of deception. "Graham knew," she said quietly. "He had to have known." Layla nodded, shuffling through more papers. "These board communications prove it. Look at this email from 3 months ago." She read aloud. "Once the initial phase is complete, profitability metrics will align with investor expectations. That's corporate speak for wait until they can't back out." Daniel whistled low. "Your board chairman was playing both sides, publicly supporting clean water initiatives while privately setting up communities for exploitation." "Pull up that procurement diagram again," Nia said, returning to the table. "I want to understand exactly how Omar's network connects to these intermediary companies." They spent the next hour mapping relationships between shell corporations, consulting firms, and offshore entities. Daniel's investigative background proved invaluable as he identified patterns in the corporate structures. "It's brilliant in an evil way," he muttered. "They build these layers of separation, so no single document proves the scheme. But when you put it all together," he gestured at their wall of evidence. "The shareholder meeting is in 2 days," Layla said. "If we present this right, the board won't have anywhere to hide." She started organizing documents into clear plastic folders. "We open with the hidden fees, then show the default triggers, then reveal Graham's prior knowledge. Don't forget the technical falsification," Daniel added. "These safety testing reports were clearly rushed and manipulated. That alone could trigger regulatory action." For the first time since the gala, Nia felt real hope surge through her chest. This wasn't just defensive ammunition. It was enough to go on offense, to expose the entire corrupt machine. "We need to prepare this perfectly," she said. "No gaps, no assumptions, everything backed by hard evidence." Layla pulled out her laptop. "I'll draft the presentation structure tonight. We should have separate packets for shareholders, regulators, and media. I can help format the technical proof," Daniel offered. "Make the complex parts digestible for a general audience." Energy filled the room as they planned their counterattack. Nia allowed herself to imagine the moment of revelation, watching Graham's face as his scheme unraveled, seeing Omar's network exposed, protecting the communities that trusted her. Maybe she could save everything that mattered. "The shareholders will have to act once they see this," Layla said, her voice confident. "The liability exposure alone, and the regulatory implications," Daniel added. "No board can ignore evidence of systemic fraud." Nia began gathering her things, finally ready to head home and rest. Tomorrow they would refine their case, strengthen any weak points, prepare for every possible challenge. For now, she felt steadier than she had in days. "Our source came through," she said. "I was starting to believe we'd never find the proof we needed." "Speaking of which," Daniel said, checking his phone, "let me send a quick thank you. See if they have any last files to share before we call it a night." His fingers moved across the screen. Layla started packing up her files. "We should get some sleep. Tomorrow we'll be busy." "Wait," Daniel frowned at his phone. "That's strange. The message isn't going through." He tried again. "Their account is showing as deactivated." "Try calling," Nia suggested. Daniel shook his head. Numbers dead. Complete disconnect. He looked up, concern creasing his face. Our source has gone dark. The morning light felt harsh and accusing as Nia's phone exploded with alerts. Bloomberg, Reuters, Financial Times, every major outlet splashed variations of the same devastating headline. Aegis CEO knew of contract issues months before Gala incident. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the coverage. Somehow, internal emails had leaked showing her discussing contract terms with Omar's team last quarter. The timestamps and content suggested she had approved preliminary structures she now claimed were hidden from her. It was a perfect poison pill, targeting her integrity just when she needed it most. "These are fake," she whispered, staring at quoted passages that felt wrong. "I never wrote these." Her driver navigated morning traffic, while she frantically called Layla. No answer. Daniel's phone went straight to voicemail. By the time they reached Aegis headquarters, the lobby screens were cycling through financial analysts, debating her credibility crisis. Security guards shifted uncomfortably as she crossed the lobby. Their earpieces crackled with constant chatter. In the elevator, two junior executives studied their shoes, avoiding eye contact. The air felt thick with betrayal. She found Graham already holding court in the main boardroom. Board members sat grim-faced around the table while he stood at the head, radiating false concern. "Ah, Nia," he said smoothly. "I'm afraid recent developments require immediate action." "Those emails are fabricated," she said, her voice steady despite the rage building in her chest. "I can prove it, if you give me time." "The board has seen enough evidence of irregular conduct," Graham continued, as if she hadn't spoken. "Given the sensitivity of ongoing investigations, we're implementing standard crisis protocols." "Standard crisis protocols?" Nia's laugh held no humor. "You mean a coup?" A security officer appeared in the doorway. Two more waited in the hall. "Effective immediately," Graham announced. "You are suspended pending full review. Your system access and building credentials are temporarily revoked. The board will issue a statement within the hour." "You can't do this," Nia said. "I built this company. These people know me." "Which makes this particularly painful," Graham sighed. "But we must demonstrate neutral oversight. Surely you understand." She looked around the table, seeking any ally. Most avoided her gaze. One younger member started to speak, but went quiet when Graham cleared his throat. "Where's Layla?" Nia demanded. "Legal counsel is restricted from internal systems during the review period. Standard procedure, of course. They had to isolate her completely." The security chief stepped forward. "Ms. Albright, please come with us." She stood tall, smoothing her jacket. "I'll collect my personal items first." "Already packed," Graham said, gesturing to a cardboard box by the door. Again, standard procedure. The humiliation was carefully choreographed. They marched her through the open office floor where employees pretended to work while watching sideways, past the break room where she had celebrated countless project launches, past the wall of photos showing her breaking ground on water treatment facilities around the world. Her phone buzzed constantly. News alerts showed Aegis stock dropping sharply. Institutional investors were expressing concern. Lenders were reviewing exposure. The carefully built Tower of Trust was crumbling. In the lobby, a cluster of reporters had already gathered. Camera flashes sparked through the glass. Graham's media team would be feeding them the approved narrative. Responsible board acts swiftly. Troubled CEO steps aside. Investigation ongoing. The security team guided her to a side exit. Her regular driver had been replaced with an unfamiliar face. The cardboard box felt pathetically light. 20 years of work reduced to a few framed photos and desk trinkets. As they pulled away, she checked her phone again. Daniel had texted, "Sources gone silent. Someone's spooked them bad." Layla finally called, but could only say she was locked out of all systems and documents. They had played it perfectly. The leaked emails poisoned her credibility just before she could present the real evidence. Now that evidence was sealed behind corporate firewalls, while a false narrative hardened into accepted fact. The car wound through morning traffic. On CNBC, Commentators were already treating both sides as equally suspect. Questions surround both the deal structure and the CEO's handling of concerns. Nia's throat tightened. This wasn't just about losing power or money. They were trying to rewrite her entire story, transform her from whistleblower to conspirator, paint her as just another corrupt executive instead of the woman who had dedicated her life to bringing clean water to forgotten communities. She thought of her father's favorite quote, "They can take your job, but not your integrity." But they were trying to take both, using her own company as the weapon. "Where to, ma'am?" the driver asked. Nia looked at the sad box in her lap, at the building disappearing behind them. She couldn't face going home yet, couldn't bear to see the worry in Imani's eyes. "Take me to Parkview Heights," she said. The old neighborhood. She needed to remember why she started this fight in the first place. Needed to see the community where contaminated water had once sickened families. Where she had first promised herself that someone had to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. As the car turned east, her phone buzzed with Graham's press statement announcing her suspension. The fall was complete. Nia walked slowly down Preston Street, past the red brick row houses where she'd grown up. The neighborhood had aged, but signs of Aegis's work were everywhere. Fresh blue paint marked the hydrants her company had rehabilitated. New pipes gleamed through excavation sites. Above ground, water towers bore the distinctive Aegis logo, not as corporate branding, but as proof that someone still cared about forgotten places. An elderly woman watering her small garden recognized Nia and waved. "Those new filters you put in last year changed everything. My grandkids can drink straight from the tap now." Nia's throat tightened. This was what Aegis meant. Not stock prices or boardroom politics, but grandmothers' gardens and children's health. She continued walking, noting each infrastructure project like waypoints in her company's real mission. The community clinic occupied a converted Victorian house at the end of the block. Inside, the waiting room buzzed with activity. Young mothers filled out forms while kids played with worn toys. A water dispensary in the corner, another Aegis initiative, provided free filtered water to anyone who needed it. Imani emerged from an exam room, her white coat wrinkled from a long shift. She spotted Nia and quickly ushered her mother into her small office. "I saw the news," Imani said, closing the door. "Are you okay?" "I've lost everything I built," Nia replied. "How could I be okay?" "No," Imani's voice was firm. "You haven't lost everything. Look around. Every water project, every filtration system, every repaired pipe. That's what you built. The company is just the tool. The mission is what matters." Through the window, they watched a mother fill several jugs from the dispensary. 3 years ago, her kids kept getting sick from tap water, Imani explained. Now they're healthy. "That's your legacy, Mom. Not some fancy office or stock price." Nia sank into a chair, really seeing the clinic for the first time. Pamphlets about water safety lined the walls. A map showed Aegis project sites across the neighborhood. This wasn't just a medical facility. It was living proof of what her company was meant to be. "Graham and his investors," Nia said slowly, "they don't just want to push me out. They want to turn Aegis into everything we fought against: private profit over public health, exclusive access over equal rights. Then you can't let them win," Imani replied. "Losing a title is nothing. Losing the mission is unforgivable." That evening, Nia sat in her father's old study, surrounded by his books on civil rights and social justice. The room felt right, more honest than any corporate boardroom. Layla and Daniel had joined her, spreading documents across the worn desk where her father had once graded papers and planned protests. "We've been playing their game," Nia said, "trying to work through proper channels, protect the company's reputation. That stops now." Layla nodded. "They used those channels against us." The email leak was perfectly timed. "Speaking of which," Daniel added, "those emails feel off. The language, the timing, something's not right." They reviewed everything from the beginning: the gala confrontation, the hidden contract terms, the board's sudden unity, the convenient leak. Patterns emerged that corporate politics had obscured. "Look at the shell companies," Daniel said, spreading out his research. "They don't just hide ownership. They create distance between the real players and the communities they target." "Classic privatization playbook," Layla agreed. "First, make water access unstable. Then offer private solutions at premium prices. The poor pay most or go without." Nia stood, pacing the small room. Family photos watched from the walls, her father teaching, her younger self protesting unsafe water conditions. "I founded Aegis to fight exactly this kind of predation. We're not just facing corrupt executives. We're facing the whole machine that turns public necessities into private commodities." "So, what's our new strategy?" Layla asked. "No more internal appeals. No more careful statements. We gather evidence strong enough to expose everything at once. The deal structure, the board collusion, the real plan for those communities. Make it so public, so undeniable, that they can't spin their way out." Imani arrived with coffee and fresh eyes. While the others planned, she began sorting through archived correspondence, looking for patterns they might have missed. "Mom," she said suddenly, "these leaked emails quote you discussing reverse osmosis retrofitting parameters, but you never use that phrase. You always say filtration system upgrades. I've heard you correct people about it." Nia froze. "You're right. That's engineering jargon from the new technical team, the one Graham brought in after he started meeting privately with Omar and Tariq," Layla finished. They all stared at the emails, seeing them with new clarity. The mistake was small but telling, like someone writing in Nia's voice without knowing her actual vocabulary. "Wait," Nia said, leaning over Imani's shoulder to study the email. "Show me that phrase again." "Right here," Imani pointed. "Asset harmony alignment in the context of regional infrastructure planning. But that's not how you talk about community projects." Daniel pulled out his laptop. "I've been archiving board communications. Let me search for that exact phrase." His fingers flew across the keyboard. "Here. It appears 3 times in a preliminary investor deck dated 2 days after the gala. All in presentations created by the interim leadership team." Layla grabbed her phone. "I know someone who can help. A digital forensics specialist named Maya Rodriguez. She's independent, discreet, and owes me a favor from a whistleblower case last year." "Can we trust her?" Nia asked. "Completely. She hates corporate fraud more than I do, if that's possible." Layla stepped into the hallway to make the call. Nia paced her father's study, energy coursing through her veins for the first time since the suspension. The walls of books watched silently, volumes on civil rights, social justice, and the power of truth against systemic lies. She touched their spines like talismans. Maya arrived within an hour, carrying specialized equipment in a battered messenger bag. She was younger than Nia expected, with bright eyes and quick movements. Layla explained the situation, she said, setting up her laptop. "Let's see what these emails are really made of." They worked through the night. Maya's fingers danced across multiple screens, comparing document versions, metadata timestamps, and linguistic patterns. Empty coffee cups accumulated. The desk lamp cast long shadows. "Look at this," Maya said around 3 a.m. The leaked emails show consistent formatting artifacts, tiny spacing irregularities and hidden character codes that match documents created weeks after the dates on these messages. She pulled up side-by-side comparisons. "See these phrase clusters? Operational efficiency metrics, stakeholder value proposition, asset harmony alignment. They're corporate buzzwords that appear in board memos from after the gala, but they're inserted into emails supposedly written months earlier." "Can you prove the alterations?" Nia asked. "Beyond doubt. The digital fingerprints are clear once you know where to look. Someone reconstructed these emails using language templates from more recent documents. Not very sophisticated if you have the right tools to analyze them." Daniel had been making calls to his own network despite the hour. "I've got something too," he said. "Remember that photographer who was documenting donor arrivals at the gala? Her full event log shows Graham meeting privately with Omar and Tariq for 40 minutes before the public reception began. "That fits the timeline," Layla said. "The same window when Graham was supposedly delayed in traffic, according to his official schedule." "There's more," Daniel continued. "I have procurement records showing shell companies linked to Omar and Tariq began positioning for contracts 3 weeks before the gala. They were already moving pieces into place." Nia's hands clenched. They weren't just arrogant on that terrace. They were confident. They thought the board had already cleared their path. Maya's computer chimed. "Final analysis is complete. Want to see the smoking gun?" They gathered around her screen. She pointed to a technical breakdown of the email metadata. These messages weren't just altered. They were partially constructed from scratch using text fragments from multiple sources. The forgers pulled language from board memos, investor presentations, and technical documents, all created after the gala. It's like a digital ransom note made from different documents instead of magazine clippings. "That's why the language doesn't sound like me," Nia said. "They built fake emails using their own corporate jargon." "Exactly. And they weren't careful about matching your actual writing style or technical vocabulary." The forensic trail is clear. Layla began organizing the evidence into categories: forgery proof, timeline reconstruction, financial connections, board collusion. This is what we needed. Not just suspicious patterns, but documented fraud. They didn't just try to force you out. They actively fabricated evidence to destroy your credibility. Dawn was breaking outside the study windows when Nia's phone buzzed. It was an automated notice about the upcoming shareholder meeting. She read it aloud. "As a suspended executive under investigation, attendance is permitted, but speaking privileges are restricted unless formally contested through appropriate channels." "They're trying to silence you at your own company's shareholder meeting," Imani said, anger in her voice. "No," Nia replied. "They're giving us exactly what we need. A public forum, where they can't control the narrative." She looked around the room at her allies. Layla's legal brilliance, Daniel's investigative instincts, Maya's technical expertise, Imani's sharp eye for detail. They thought they could bury the truth under corporate procedure and fake evidence. Instead, they've given us the perfect stage to expose everything. Layla's phone chimed with another message. Her expression hardened as she read it. "The meeting is scheduled for next week. They're explicitly stating that you won't be given speaking time unless you force the issue through formal channels, which they control." "Of course they are," Nia said. "They think procedure is their shield. But we have something they didn't count on." She gestured to the mounting evidence spread across her father's old desk. "We have proof, real proof, and soon they'll learn what that means." The shareholder meeting room at the Grand Meridian Hotel buzzed with controlled tension. Security guards checked badges at every entrance. Reporters huddled near the walls, notebooks ready. Graham Vale stood at the head table, surrounded by legal counsel and crisis managers. 2 large screens showed Omar Haddad and Tariq Nasser attending remotely, their faces carefully neutral. Nia walked in alone, dressed in a deep blue suit that reminded her of her father's favorite academic robe. Heads turned. Whispers followed. The interim leadership team had claimed her office, her authority, and her reputation, but they hadn't taken her dignity. "Ms. Albright," Graham said with rehearsed concern, "as discussed in the notice, given your current status, you'll be seated in the general section." "Actually," Layla Grant interrupted, striding in with a folder of documents, "we're invoking Article 7 of the Founding Charter regarding founder speaking rights during material governance issues. Additionally, we have proxy support from shareholders representing 28% of voting equity who formally request her testimony." Graham's polished smile tightened. "That's highly irregular given the pending investigation." "The investigation you launched after leaking altered evidence?" Layla raised an eyebrow. "We can discuss that too, if you'd prefer." A murmur rippled through the room. Reporters leaned forward. Graham conferred hurriedly with his lawyers, who clearly hadn't prepared for this procedural challenge. After tense negotiation, they granted Nia a 20-minute window following the interim CEO's presentation. She sat calmly through an hour of carefully massaged numbers and vague reassurances about stabilizing leadership and realigning strategic priorities. The interim CEO, James Morton, spoke about regrettable communication breakdowns and emotional reactions, while carefully avoiding specifics about the deal itself. When Nia finally rose to speak, Graham looked almost smug. He expected desperate self-defense, the kind of emotional display that would validate their narrative about her instability. Instead, she walked to the podium with the steady presence of someone who had found solid ground. "Before we discuss evidence," she began, "I want to remind everyone why this company exists." Her voice carried to every corner. "I founded Aegis because I watched families in my childhood neighborhood get sick from contaminated water, while wealthy districts remained safe. I built it to protect communities that powerful people found inconvenient to serve. That mission isn't just history. It's happening right now in this room." She gestured to the screens where Omar and Tarek watched. The deal these men proposed wasn't about expanding clean water access. It was about exploiting it. And when I refused to let that happen, they didn't just mock me at a gala. They tried to bury the truth under layers of corporate manipulation. Nia opened her laptop, and documents appeared on the main display screen. "Let's start with the hidden annexes that were never sent to our legal department. Notice the signature dates. These were circulated to select board members weeks before I was told the final terms were ready." She advanced through highlighted sections. "Here are the price escalator clauses buried in subsection 14C. They would have allowed rates to triple in low-income districts within 18 months. And here are the shell company structures designed to obscure who really controls local water rights after privatization." The room had gone completely silent. Even the reporters had stopped typing, transfixed by the methodical unveiling of fraud. Graham's face had lost its color. "Now, let's examine the board communications that were concealed from standard review." New documents filled the screen. Note the timing of these messages coordinating strategy before the gala. And here's something particularly interesting. Early drafts of press statements about my removal, prepared days before I actually refused the deal. Omar tried to interrupt, his voice sharp through the speakers. "This is a selective interpretation." "I'm not finished," Nia said flatly. "Because after I exposed your contempt at the gala, you didn't just retaliate. You committed fraud." She nodded to Layla, who distributed packets to key shareholders. "These are forensic analyses of the emails used to discredit me. They weren't just altered. They were partially fabricated using language from documents created weeks after the dates they claimed to be from." Graham started to stand, but Nia's voice cut through his attempt to speak. "The technical evidence is conclusive. Would you like our digital forensics expert to walk through it line by line? She's here and quite eager to demonstrate exactly how your team constructed false evidence." The shareholders were now openly confronting board members, demanding explanations. The reporters had recovered from their shock and were furiously taking notes. Tariq's video feed had mysteriously gone dark. "But perhaps," Nia said, "the most revealing evidence is the simplest." She turned to face the room directly. "I have authenticated material from the gala itself. Would you like to hear what these men really said when they thought no one could understand them?" The room fell silent as the final exhibit began. On the main screen, a precise timeline appeared showing the gala events with authenticated translations, witness statements, and internal communications that followed. First came the verified Arabic exchange from the terrace, translated by 3 independent linguistic experts. The words hit harder in the stark corporate setting than they had in the ballroom. Omar and Tariq's dismissive laughter about the symbolic face and their certainty that serious men would handle real decisions exposed not just prejudice, but premeditation. "This is outrageous," Omar interrupted from his video feed. "The translation lacks cultural context." "Actually," said Professor Amira Hassan, rising from the audience, "I'm the head of Middle Eastern Studies at Georgetown, and I personally verified every word. Would you like to challenge my understanding of cultural context? Tarek tried next. You're twisting casual remarks. Here are your messages from later that night. Nia continued calmly, advancing the slides. At 11:42 p.m., you wrote to Graham, "She was meant to sign tonight. Handle your CEO problem or the deal dies." At 11:57, Graham responded, "Already coordinating with PR. By morning, she'll be painted as unstable." Graham lurched to his feet. "These are privileged communications, obtained through legal discovery," Layla cut in. "And since they demonstrate conspiracy to commit securities fraud, privilege doesn't apply." The evidence continued building. Internal emails showed Graham instructing crisis managers to push the emotional narrative before any public statement from Nia. Calendar entries revealed private meetings between board members and investors that were never disclosed to shareholders. Financial traces exposed consulting fees routed through shell companies. "Mr. Vale," called out Janet Chen from the Regulatory Compliance Office, "did you inform the board that you had a personal financial interest in these intermediary firms?" Graham's face had gone from pale to gray. That's not. Those relationships were." "I have the incorporation documents," Nia said quietly. "Would you like me to display them?" A major shareholder stood up. "I move for immediate resignation of the chairman." "Point of order." Graham tried desperately. "We need to follow proper." "Second the motion," called another shareholder. "And I move to expand it to all board members who knew about the hidden annexes." The room erupted. Shareholders demanded roll call votes. Board members tried to distance themselves from Graham, suddenly claiming they'd been misled. Reporters were already filing breaking stories. 2 regulators stepped out, phones pressed to their ears. Omar attempted one final diplomatic save. "Perhaps we can discuss this privately." "No," Nia said. "We won't." She advanced to the final slides. "These are the actual contract terms you tried to hide. Price increases targeting the poorest districts. Water access restrictions based on payment history. Punitive fees for communities that resist privatization. This wasn't just about humiliating me. You wanted to use my company to exploit vulnerable people." The evidence was now too overwhelming to deny. Graham slumped in his chair as emergency motions began circulating. Board members who had supported him minutes earlier now refused to meet his eyes. The interim CEO sat frozen, his career visibly crumbling. "I move to restore Nia Albright as CEO with immediate effect," called out a major institutional investor, "and to commence full investigation of all parties involved in this attempt at fraud." "Second," shouted multiple voices. "Point of order," Layla said crisply. "We need to handle the resignation first." "Mr. Vale?" Graham looked around the room, seeking any ally or escape. Finding none, he stood shakily. I hereby resign as chairman of the board, effective immediately." "Note the time," Layla told the secretary. "Now, for the remaining board members who participated in concealing documents and coordinating false narratives." The next 30 minutes became a methodical dismantling. Board members tried to negotiate, only to be confronted with their own messages and signatures. Omar and Tarek's video feeds conveniently failed. Shareholders demanded oversight reform. Reporters broadcast updates in real time. Through it all, Nia remained composed. She didn't gloat or raise her voice. She simply presented fact after fact, document after document, until the entire corrupt structure collapsed under its own exposed weight.